My name is Jordan Kanarek. I'm a member of the Collegewise team, and we're going to chat about college research and building a balanced list today. Now, I don't know how many of you follow the news as closely as I have been for the past 24 hours, but a decision was made by the Supreme Court today, and that decision is to remove race from the application process. I am saying that at the forefront today because you might be sitting here wondering, hey, is that guy on the other side of the screen going to talk about it? The answer is yes. I intend to spend some time on this at the end of the call for those who want to engage in the conversation. That said, I am going to focus on the topic at hand today because I know that is why you are here. So I promise I will come back to that, but for now, I want to focus us on college research, building a balanced list, how to go about it. As we get things started, my first question is, if you wouldn't mind, could you please in the chat let me know, are you a rising 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader? Are you a 12th grader kind of finalizing your list? Just throw a number in the chat. I'd love to kind of get a sense of what age group I'm speaking to and so on. Okay, rising seniors, excellent. You are here at the right time. I'm glad to hear that. If there are any 9th or 10th graders out there, great, listen, but my rising seniors and my rising 11th graders, this is meant for you. So first off, let's make sure that the guy on the other end of the screen actually knows what he's talking about. He does. I was, first off, a Collegewise student way back when. Most of you were in diapers or maybe not yet born. I won't age myself too much, but post Collegewise student, I went to Gettysburg College on a scholarship because, well, I wanted to make sure I didn't come out of college with any debt. And I found myself in the perfect place for me. A place where I could grow, where I'd be held accountable for my actions, such as showing up to class and engaging in discussions, and where I could create my own major as I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, becoming an environmental policy and law major, and combining environmental science, pre-law, and political science. Well, when I went out of college and realized there are about 6 jobs available to people with my major for about 10,000 applicants, and I didn't get one, I said, what do I really enjoy doing? A decade later, here we are. So that's in mind. My goal today is as follows, and you'll notice that a majority of the time, I am not going to read to you what is on the screen. You are capable of doing so, but I want you to understand what our goals are today. Let's make sure that as you leave, you have a sense of what's out there, what's available to you, how to go about identifying which schools are available to you and best for you. And then from there, some tips, tricks, resources you can use, as well as some case studies done here to help you understand the importance of fit, the importance of a balanced list over this idea of trophy hunting or prestige. Throughout this webinar, I'm going to make sure to pause, share, answer any questions. You can use the chat, you can come off mute. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. It is why I am here. As I mentioned, I'll stay on after, but I want to make sure that we get into the crux of the conversation. So let's get things underway. What you'll see below are colleges all over the country in each of the 50 states. Now, I'm not going to go through and list all of them, though I could, and I'd have fun doing so. But the reason I wanted to show this slide is the reality of it is there are 2,400 strong, accredited, and selective universities in the United States. There's even more than 2,400, but given the conversation we're having today, 2,400 is the number you should have in mind. I would be willing to bet that I could go ask somebody to come off mute and many of you could list which Ivies are available. What are they? What are the schools that are considered Ivy level? But I bet that if I asked you to name 4 different public schools in Texas, or even within Maryland, or within Virginia, it might be difficult. Some of you could do it, but some may not. Why? Because we live currently in a day and age where the name of the school seems to be something people care deeply about. Can I put this on my sweatshirt? Will my parents tell all their friends and be proud? Will I be able to go to my friends without thinking, hey, I got into a school that is really selective, or, oh my gosh, I'm going to my safety, I can't tell anyone. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how you should or shouldn't think. That's not my job. But what I can tell you is there's roughly 50 schools out there that we call highly rejective. Why? Because they accept 20% or fewer of their students. And every year that number is growing. Over the past few years, schools like the University of Southern California, UCLA, University of Michigan, they've creeped into that realm because they continue to get more and more applications. Over 20 years ago, Northeastern University, which many of you probably know and go, yeah, that's really selective, they took over half the students that applied. The University of Southern California used to be called the University of Spoiled Children because people who had money would send their kid there to be in LA because they took everyone. Now it has roughly an 8% admit rate. So the bad of it, Some of these schools that you are thinking, oh, that's really cool. Oh, I've heard of that. Oh, I'd like to go there. They are very difficult to get into. The good news, like I said, there's roughly 2,350 other schools out there that can bring balance to a list should you be intending to pursue some of these others. Given this reality, it's very easy to go, does anyone get into college anymore? And the answer is yes. People do get into Brown. People do get into UC Berkeley's MET program. People do go off to Carnegie Mellon and Duke and Northwestern. But people also go off to college at Charleston, Eastern Kentucky University, Texas Tech, University of Arkansas. And some of those students go on to do amazing things, just like some students who go to Ivy level schools find themselves struggling to find what they want to do. So today's focus is going to be on what you need to do to make sure your research is good, that your list is balanced, and that you have options in the end. So to get things going, I'm going to start us off with some questions. These aren't the only 5 questions you should be asking yourself, but they are some that can help you begin the conversation. As the chat box mentioned, many of you are rising seniors, so you may already have a list of schools. If you have a list of schools, use these questions to make sure that this list of schools meets your needs. If you're here thinking, I know I want to apply to UMD, I'm probably going to apply to Towson, but I'm not sure what else, use these questions as a jumping off point. But let's say that you live in the Bethesda area and you like your proximity to the city, but you really wish you were in a city. You wish that you could walk outside your door and have right next door that Dunkin' Donuts so you can grab your coffee before you go off to class and then take the train across town to your internship. Boston University, George Washington University, NYU may be the perfect school for you. Whereas if you're the student who thinks that if you walk outside your dorm room and you are finding yourself in the middle of the city at 8 a.m., you're going to have a panic attack because there's too much going on, those 3 schools I just mentioned would be your worst nightmare, right? What we need to do to begin is evaluate what it is you need to be happy and successful at the college realm. I mentioned before that when I went to college, I knew that while I thought I would want a big school, but I knew that at a big school with 500 people in a freshman year seminar class, I wouldn't hold myself accountable and go to class. So when I went to Gettysburg and I was told I had to take Anthropology 103 my freshman year, I was like, oh, well, I heard college, you don't really have to go to class, you have to do the midterm. So I missed the first class and I missed the second class. And after that second class, I got a knock on my door. I opened the door and it was the professor. And the first thing she asked was if I was okay, how I was acclimating to college. And I said, oh yeah, I'm fine. Why do you ask? And she said, okay, good. If you miss my class one more time, you will not get higher than a C-. She handed me the syllabus. She said, have a great day. And I did not miss that class again. And yes, I did get higher than a C-. But my point is, I knew that for me, going to a school that was actually smaller than my high school, a very big public school in California, went all the way to Pennsylvania. Yeah, that's right. That I needed to be held accountable because I was not yet the most mature individual. Oh, shocker that a high school boy wasn't that mature, but it's what I needed to do, what I was going to do in college. I also knew that being outside the city, somewhere I could focus on my academics and connect with people would be better for me. Hence me finding a small liberal arts college in a fairly rural area, but only about an hour, 10 minutes from DC, and an hour from Baltimore. Is that your journey? I don't know. That's for you to ask yourself today. That's for you to consider. And below are the 5 big factors I take into account when going through college research. Every student that we work with here at Collegewise has a different focus. For some, it is the financial aspect. For some, it's the size. For others, it's I want to be within driving distance of mom and dad, but far enough away that mom can't just drop in and embarrass me in front of my roommate. For some, it's I need a place where I will have access to skiing. This is a passion of mine. I must have a mountain nearby. But your job, as we go through this conversation, is to evaluate of these 5 topics, which ones are most key to you? What's the need versus the want? I need to know that I am not paying $70,000 a year, and I would like to do that at a place that's fewer than 10,000 students. I need to have a chemical engineering major, and I would like it to be less than $75,000. But if I were to get into Cornell as a chemical engineering program, I'd be okay with it, right? It's a give and a take, folks. And so when you're considering this, the decision-making process is simple. Financial, academic, and social aspects are a big key portion of this process. For you, what's the most important? And the three always intertwine. But you need to decide, and I often suggest, especially with that big green one, financial, you discuss this with your parents, with your guardians, understand what you as a family need to do to make sure that this is a happy and successful process where you are not paying an arm and a leg, putting yourself in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, especially if you want to go to med school or some sort of grad school. But it's why this conversation is so key. So for my rising seniors on this call, whether you're doing this right now as we're talking, which is okay, or you do it right after, take a look at that list of 6, 8, 10 schools. Ask yourself, am I meeting my needs financially, socially, and academically? And if you are, well done. And if you're not, even if it's that school, Wash U, that you've always thought was great because you have family in St. Louis, it's really selective, they have great academia. Well, if they're not going to make it easy for you to go from a financial standpoint, why not consider something else? Why not consider something that doesn't require a flight, or something that is in-state, or something that's going to look at you and go, we need you, we will throw money at you. The goal of today is to understand how all these factors align for you. So before we get into how we proceed with college research, I see there's some questions. Yes, you'll have access to the slides after. Thank you for that, Kate. So no questions yet. I'm going to pause for 30 seconds. I'm going to take a sip of water. I'm going to let people either come off mute or type away in the chat box before I continue.
What if we're worried that like the area of study that we're doing, such as medicine, will take up too much of our time? Should we still be considering the activities that are available at the school?
That question is a phenomenal one. Well asked. There are two different aspects to this. Number one, medical. Number two, activities in high school. Your activities in high school should always represent you as an individual. What do you like to do? Where can I expect to see you impacting my campus? When you're in college, you'll be in the classroom a few hours a day, maybe more, depending on whether or not you're a double major and trying to cram everything in. But usually it's around 4 hours a day. And then you have your research or your homework, and then you sleep for a few hours. So if I'm an admissions officer, especially at the more selective institutions, I'm asking, what do those other 8 hours hold for you on my campus? What will you be doing? So I don't want to see you taking a step back in your activities or academics as you go into junior or senior year. But the biggest mistake students make is they enter colleges. If I want to be pre-med, I have to be bio. I have to be biochem. I have to be chem. Ellie, can I ask you, do you know what the most popular major outside of the STEM realm was last year that med schools looked at? If you say, Jordan, I have no idea, don't ask me questions in a public setting, I won't, but I'm curious what you think.
I thought it was English.
Whomever that was, you get a gold star. That is correct. English was the most popular. You know why? Because the major doesn't matter. Not at the med school level. What matters is your undergrad GPA, your ability to show an affinity for education, your ability to score well in the MCAT, the med school version of the SAT, ACT. And there are 6 different sections on there. So even if you're a bio major, you're still studying really hard for the other 5. And if you're an English major, you basically have the verbal already locked down. So now you're just studying for the science part. And the third is your ability to take advantage of internships, research, shadowing, whatever it may be. So if you're going to college as a bio major solely because that's my way to med school, I wouldn't do it. If you're going in as a bio major because it's a passion of yours and you need to be in that major, go for it. But keep in mind, bio is one of the most hyper-competitive majors to pursue right now because a lot of people want to go for it for med school. So that just, and we're going to touch more on this from a case study standpoint at the end, but my point is, focus on what you enjoy learning about right now. If you're a rising senior, your courses should be aligned with what you enjoy learning about most. If you want to double up on science and forget about your language because you already have 3 or 4 years, go for it. 11th grade is the most rigorous course schedule you can handle. 12th grade is the most rigorous course schedule you can handle in the areas of interest to you. I believe I answered your question, but if not, please let me know. When it comes to college research, I like to view it in 3 different ways: window shopping, browsing the aisles, and trying it on. It does not make sense for you to say, Mom, Dad, guardian, Can we go visit 83 different colleges over the next 3 months, spend $10,000 and all of your miles to do it? And then after that, I might be able to tell you which 6 I like. If you and your family want to do that, I'm not going to tell you can't. But do colleges want to see you spending your entire summer doing that? No, just like they don't want to see you spending your entire summer studying for SAT. Use this time wisely to grow as a person, to grow within your educational sphere. So in order to make sure you can do all those things, the best that you can do is start by window shopping. There are a number of free websites out there where you can, over a course of a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, my students, it's a few months that we spend time on this, but this summer you can go to Big Future. On Big Future, you can get, which is just, that's College Board's college research site. You can learn more about very specific things ranging from the academics and majors available at that school to the retention rates, to the size, other just very useful facts. On unigo.com, one of my favorites, you get student reviews, people telling you how much they love this campus, the diversity, the willingness of people to help, or how much somebody hates how preppy a school is. The most important thing you need to know about Unigo is that it's somebody's opinion. And just like I have my opinions around how things should be done for my students when approaching the essay, when approaching college research, you get to formulate your own. So I read Unigo, I understand people's gripes or what they love about a school, and I compare them. If I see 4 different people talk about just how bad the food is on campus, I think it's safe to say that if 4 different people said that, it's something to consider. If I see one person say that the math department is awful, and only one person, is it awful? I don't know. Maybe they had a bad experience. Maybe they didn't like a professor. Maybe they missed the deadline. This teacher wouldn't budge, and they're like, wow, you're a jerk. I can't do this. I hate this place. I'm going to write about it. So while Unigo is a very useful tool to understand how other high schoolers view an institution, college students view an institution, I wouldn't take it all for granted. I take it with a grain of salt. And then niche.com, from ratings of schools to kind of how people define their student body onto the teachers, those 3 sites alone are going to offer you a lot of insight into an institution. Bookwise, the Fisk Guide is my favorite. It's that you might see it in Ms. Hield's office. It's that big, bright green and blue one. It is phenomenal. Not only does it give you facts about the school, but it takes into account student views as well, as is the Princeton Review Guide. I think it's like 388 now, 400. It changes every year. But those 2 books for a combined $50 can potentially do for you what 10 different visits at $100 to $500 each would. There are other sites you visit, Campus Reel, College Tour, where students will, on their iPhone or on a camera, walk you around the campus. If you're like me and you don't like roller coasters, it's easy to go to those sites and kind of feel a little like, ooh, they're all over the place. But you get a real-time view from a student's perspective of their dorm, of the classroom, of their opinion about an institution. And then you have tours. I imagine there are people on this call who are thinking they want to go out west to a UC. Maybe they love the idea of UT Austin, right? Or they think about the Northeast because they love the NESCAC schools like Amherst and so on. If you're a rising senior, it's a good time to be doing virtual and online info sessions for places you can't make it to. But one of my best pieces of advice is, within an hour's distance of you, you have UMD, UMBC, Towson, Goucher, you have GW, you have Georgetown, you have American, and maybe a little over an hour, you have schools like George Mason University, and then Hood College, as well as schools like Gettysburg, like I mentioned. 10 schools that over a few days you could drive to, do tours of, and decide what you want from your campus. Do I want a big sprawling campus like UMD, a big state school? Do I want a tiny liberal arts school like Gettysburg, like that guy who's talking to me? Is that my fit, right? Use that as a barrier to entry. Nope, being in the middle of nowhere at a school that's smaller than my high school won't work for me. Good. No need to go research those or go visit them across the country if the one you saw here probably isn't going to work for you. UMD is too big for you. Now we know that other large state schools ranging from UT Austin to Illinois and on may not work. Use what you have locally. Window shop. Don't spend too much time, but definitely take into account the opportunities you have locally and online. As you begin to do this, right, you're going to find that there are things you like. There are institutions you start having an affinity for. Oh, let me pause. Anita, thank you for raising your hand. What can I answer for you?
So like when you're talking about like visiting colleges, if you can you say like if you can actually make it to the college, would it be best to, I mean, if you have a college you have in mind, do you have to visit them like in person, or can you like just like go on like virtual tours of the college itself?
I love that question. I'm going to ask you another one. Are there specific schools you're asking about?
Yes, because I already have my list, but I don't know if I have to visit every single one of them, or just like just searching, doing research about them is like good enough, or going to the actual campus is the best way to do it.
Great question. First off, Anita, the fact you asked it, what I'll do when we're done today in the chat, I'll drop a website I love for looking at schools that like to see and consider demonstrated interest. But the general rule of thumb is this: the highly selective universities, ranging from Georgetown up through the Ivies, they don't care. They're going to get their students regardless. Everyone thinks I have to go to Brown's campus. Brown doesn't care. But you know who does? Lehigh University. Lehigh is in kind of the middle of northern Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful campus. And for the most part, the students who apply to Lehigh and do a virtual tour or in-person tour and do an interview and kind of meet their needs academically, they get in. Whereas strong applicants who don't do those things all the time, just look at Lehigh because they have a 30% admit rate, consider it the next tier down from the Ivies, and they don't get in. They're like, why? Because some schools want to see demonstrated interest. The general rule of thumb, Anita, and all, large state schools don't really care. The only one that I have seen show an interest is Michigan for in-person or virtual tours, but most state schools don't care. The highly selective institutions like Brown and so on don't care. The smaller the school and the less selective, but still in that selective range, they do care. So if your list is comprised of schools where it's a 2 to 3 hour drive, and it's school like a Villanova or a Lehigh, those are, or Muhlenberg, right? Those are schools where I would try to do a visit. If your schools are actually in the Midwest, like Carleton College, well, Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, they love demonstrated interest, but they also know that it's not necessarily easy to get there. So an info session online is fine. And then you can email your admissions officer, type in Carleton College admissions officers, right? Oh, the admissions officer for Maryland is Miss Smith. Hi, Miss Smith. My name is Anita. While I couldn't make the campus, I did an online info session. I loved learning about the campus and the opportunities. I was wondering if there was anything else that you would suggest for a student interested in X, right? Start that conversation. So what I'll do, Anita, when we're done, and if I don't remind me, is I'll put in the chat the list of schools that like to see demonstrated interest. But if that school is within an hour or two, Anita, even if they don't need demonstrated interest, there's probably value in going to visit. Make sure that this is somewhere, like, not just from a research standpoint or because a friend told you has a good neurobio program. Go see it yourself. Make sure this is somewhere you'd be happy before you apply, especially if there's a lot of work with it.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. And this is a perfect segue, so well done, into kind of the browsing the aisles segment of the conversation. You now have a number of schools you're interested in, or you have a sense of what you like. What else is out there for that school, right? How do I know whether or not this is the place for me? There are a number of ways to learn about an institution. You can go learn about all the different research opportunities at a Lehigh University. And for those, by the way, I don't mean to mansplain this at all, but there's a difference between a university and a college. A college is for undergrad only. A university means they have grad and undergrad. So if a college for undergrad only has research opportunities, that means that they're filled solely by undergraduate students. Whereas if a university has it, well, they may have a lot of research opportunities at University of Michigan, at UT Austin, at UVA, but they also have grad students. That doesn't mean that all these opportunities solely go to grad, but you will be splitting that time. So just something to keep in mind when you're considering things like the research opportunities on campus, the internships that they help students gather. But one of my favorite exercises for students as they're narrowing a list down or considering the schools, go look up that school on Twitter, see what they're posting about. See what that school's focuses are right now, because they'll post things like our new research opportunity is underway. They'll talk about things along the lines of a new initiative they're doing on campus. They'll bring up that they have a new data science lab on campus that they just spent $10 million on from a donor who is a graduate, right? Easy place to gather that up-to-date data. You can also go and look at the school's newspaper, the Lehigh Times, and find out what students are writing about, what they're raving about, the initiatives they're taking on campus. And as you're browsing these aisles, you're going to start to learn about the student body, what their interests are, how they align with yours or don't. The important thing about browsing the aisle is that you use this as an opportunity to start narrowing the list down before you try it on, before you go and visit. Because if you're going to look at schools that are potentially further away from home, if you're going to spend the money and time and take away from your internship or your summer job or volunteering or whatever, or the application work you're doing, you got to make sure it makes sense. And this is where your question meter really comes into play. If the UCs don't look at demonstrated interest, but you know you want to apply to them, apply. If you get in, then go visit. If you're going to be out there visiting your uncle and aunt who live in the San Francisco area and you can go over to Berkeley for the day or Davis, go for it. But to spend thousands of dollars to go see schools that don't care if you're there or not, just so that you know if you want to apply, that's your prerogative. My general rule of thumb, look locally. If you like big state schools, you liked California when you visited, apply to the UCs. Spend the time and energy on the application. Go ahead and spend the $75 per school to apply. And then if you get in and you're comparing that to UMD or you're comparing that to UVA or whatever it may be, go visit. But I only really try it on if it's easy or it's expected by the institution. Another school that you can use it as an example, Santa Clara University in the central to northern California area, they care deeply about demonstrated interest. But their rule is, if you're within a 3-ish hour drive of us, we expect you on campus. If you live across the country, we just ask you to join a virtual info session. We know that's a lot of money. We're not expecting that of you. So if you just found out that the school is saying that, why would you fly all the way across the country unless you're just already going to be there? Another institution, Stevens Institute of Technology, right outside New York City. So about a 3.5 hour drive from where you are in Bethesda area, Brockville, Gaithersburg area. You're going to find that you can drive to Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, New Jersey, see its proximity to the city, but also get a sense of the labs and opportunities on campus. The kids who do that from the Mid-Atlantic oftentimes have a better opportunity of getting in than the kid who doesn't visit, because Stevens looks and goes, hey, if you've never been here, how do we know you want to come here and that you're not just going to choose another school over us that's another institute of technology or something? They waitlist a lot of strong applicants. So these are just examples of local schools where you can go visit if it makes sense. But again, this is a case-by-case basis, and why that list I'll post about demonstrated interest will be valuable to you. Let me pause for a second because I'm doing a lot of that talking at you thing. And while some have been raising their hands, I want to give others the chance to ask questions. Virtual tours count as college tours? Yes, but remember, some virtual tours, you just click on a video, it kind of walks you through in 15 minutes. The college can't see that. You clicked that. So my recommendation is you type in University of Rochester information session, virtual. You click on a time where you have to register for it and attend. The college now has in the system on the back end that you, Chris, have attended that virtual info session and have shown that demonstrated interest. So I always go for the information sessions, not just the recorded virtual tour. Many of you have heard, one more question before I go. Finding schools when your major is uncommon. Well, the easy way to do that, that I have found is like, I used chemical engineering as an example before. Chemical engineering is one of the less sought after engineering programs. It's a very specific niche program. So I have students, when they're looking at that, I would type into Google colleges with chemical engineering and see what populates. The general rule of thumb is, if you know, hands down, you want to be an architecture major, chemical engineering, nursing, right? Things where you actually really need to find a school with those opportunities, that should drive the building of the list. It really should. But most students, it's, I think I like the idea of chemical engineering, but I might just like chemistry. I don't know. I think I like the idea of nursing, but I might just really be interested in psychology and see what happens from there, right? If you are unsure of your major or the major is fairly common, I don't really take major into consideration as a driving factor for us, because when you do, you end up looking at these, the US News World Rankings, best colleges for nursing, best colleges for chemical engineering. It's not a good way to build a list that's fit to your needs or provides balance, because you go, oh, well, MIT and this school and Harvard, they have the best business programs. So if I want to do business, that's where I have to go. Wrong. Honestly, Things like poets and quants, which are listed below, that'll give you the best sense of the schools where business programs are and investing programs are most prevalent. Schools like Babson College and Bentley College are show up on that list. And they won't show up on US News World Rankings because they don't fib the rankings like some of these other institutions do. So if there's anything I want you to take away from rankings, avoid US News World Rankings. There's a reason that Columbia and other Ivies have had to stop reporting there. Many schools were lying, and US News World Rankings tends to focus on the wrong things. They're focused on yield, the number of accepted students who attend. Do I care as much about that as I do about the opportunities for you to work hands-on with a professor in that investing program? I can't answer what your preference is, but you know what mine is. So things like the Department of Energy, they have a college scorecard where you can compare schools. Things like niche.com, they take into account more holistic reviews and things that are important to you. Best college food, that exists. Is that something that I necessarily care a lot about? No, but you might. So what I mean is things like that. And then the other one that isn't on this list, but I found recently, the World University Rankings. Teaching, research, knowledge transfers, and international outlooks, right? It takes into account a lot more that will be helping you and understanding the return on investment than does US News World Rankings. So what if you are uncertain about your major? What should this affect you? How should this affect your college lists and visits? If you're unsure about your major, you're unsure about your major. Most colleges allow you to go in undecided. Focus on the things that we talked about earlier, right? So look at things along the lines of activities. What do you like to do? What do you need access to? Do you need to be in a city to have a lot around you? Do you need to be removed from it? Do you want to go to a school where your class sizes going to freshman year are 500 or 50, right? Or that you may not know what major you want, but what are the 3 or 4 things you like to study? Go on to bigfuture.com and find colleges that offer accounting, finance, business, and marketing, because you know you want something in that realm. Or I like psychology, I like English, I like business, I like French, right? A lot of colleges have those, but make sure that as you're going through each one that you're researching, that when you go into Big Future, that majority of the majors you would be interested in, not necessarily you need to have, but would be interested in, are available to you. Like I said, it's very easy to think major has to be a driving factor. If I don't know what I want to do, then I can't look into colleges. The major doesn't decide. The institution you attend should offer you an ample opportunity to learn about many different majors. So I talked about Babson College not too long ago. Babson's an amazing institution, but 90+% of the students who go there are in some sort of business program. And they don't really have much outside that. They have an information technology major, but that's about it. So if you are, I think I like business, but I don't know, I would not encourage you to apply to Babson. You're not going to have access to other things and you're going to want to transfer, you don't want business. But if you, since you are 8 years old, loved the idea of business, it's something where you've created your own LLC and you work every summer and you've tried like selling shoes online, like you've just had this affinity for it, Babson may be a great fit for you. So what it comes down to, team, is asking yourself better questions. It's not, is this a good or bad school? Is this a good school for me? Does it offer me access to professors? Does it give me access to the city? Does it give me access to going home and doing my laundry if I need to because I don't know how to do it? And yes, just so you know, in freshman year, I made a lot of money because my mother, when I was 13, after my bar mitzvah, made me learn how to do my own laundry because now I was a man. And there were people in college who didn't. So they'd pay me to do their laundry. That's why I make that suggestion. But what are your strengths? What makes you happy? What helps you through each day? If you're the sort of person who during the wintertime, even though winters in Maryland aren't awful, but during the wintertime, you just can't get outside, are you really going to be happy in Boston? Are you going to be okay going to University of Michigan? Well, I love the football team. Okay, but January, are you going to leave your dorm when it's 3 degrees? Ask yourself these questions. What is your priority? My priority is going to a school where I'm not going to pay an arm and a leg. Okay, let's look in state. Let's find private institutions that offer a lot of merit aid to students of your caliber, right? Stop asking just the basic, what's the best college? What's the right college? And focus on you within it. So my recommendation here, folks, it's very easy to get stuck on a name. It's very easy to think, oh, well, because my parents went here, I should go here. I can't change that mentality. What I can tell you is when you focus on what your strengths are, what activities you enjoy doing, what sort of location or size or proximity to home you need, what things you like to study. When you take all that into account, stop thinking about the selectivity or stop thinking about the name. This process offers you a lot more, a lot less stress, a lot more balance, and so on. And the students I work with any given year who do follow this, oftentimes they get into 2/3 to 3/4 of their schools, sometimes more, with a lot of money. And last year I had students who didn't want to take that advice. And even though I tried to compel them otherwise, they decided to apply to all the Ivies among others with a safety or two. And they got into only those safeties, because that does happen if you don't create a balanced list from time to time. And even if you say at the beginning, no, I'm okay if it's UMD, it's really hard to get excited about a school when 9 others said no. Just keep that in mind. So, things to consider. Lists 6 to 10 is a really good number. Plenty of students nowadays that think 14 to 16 and so on. Well, remember, every school you apply to costs money, usually $50 to $80 just to apply. Also, the more you apply to, the more work you're doing, and that quantity can take away from the quality of your writings, of your essays. Stanford has 8 essays, Princeton 7, Columbia 6, and they're not easy. So when you decide you're going to apply to all 3 of those, just right there, for those of you who are mathematicians, you know that's 21 essays for 3 schools that aren't easy. And even if you do well by them, these schools have single-digit acceptance rates. So if you're going to do that, make sure you have a couple likelies. And make sure that as you're going through this, you consider the cost. If you're not sure whether or not your family is going to meet the needs for financial aid, every college since 2011 has been required to have a net price calculator, an NPC, on their website. Type in Harvard NPC. You will get access to their net price calculator. It'll ask some basic questions. While you have to take it with a grain of salt because things can change year over year, if you would do this for 4 different schools and it says your expected family contribution is $20,000 for all 4, the likelihood is that these schools are going to see, after you apply for the FAFSA, the federal aid form for student aid, and the CSS profile, the asset, but basically used to understand your assets for private schools, you may only be on the hook for $20,000, and these schools will cover the rest, or the government will, and then you'll get loans, right? My point is, don't wait until after you've applied to do this. If you think that financially it's going to make sense for you to stay in state or to find schools where you'll get money, take a look at your list, look at the NPCs. It'll take you an hour or so, but it'll give you a lot more knowledge to work off of. So this is the breakdown that I would offer as far as the reach target likely realm, okay? Every student is different. For one student, Michigan State may be a reach, for another it might be a likely, but the generalities are, it's easy to think I'm a 4.0 student. I have a 1520 SAT. Virginia Tech's a slam dunk for me. It was 5 years ago. It isn't anymore. A lot of students who want to pursue Virginia Tech from Maryland, well, consider this. Virginia Tech's a state school in Virginia. Where do you think they get the majority of their out-of-state applicants from? North Carolina, Maryland. So you're applying with a lot of other students from Howard County, Montgomery County, and you're being compared to them. And a majority of the students who want to go to Virginia Tech, it's business and engineering they want to go for. Well, if you are applying to that school along with 30 other students from your institution this year, they're not just going to take 30 kids from the same school. They're big, but they want diversity as far as location and so on, right? So I would say be very wary of looking at a school just based on the fact that it might have a 45% admit rate when we're talking about less than 25 here, because when they're looking out of state, that admit rate drops pretty significantly. On the likely side, some of my favorite in-state options are UMBC and Towson. I love both those institutions because both of them offer research, both of them offer access to a city, both of them offer majors ranging from history to biology. They're really good in-state institution options. Or, there are schools like Arizona or Alabama where if you're at a certain echelon, by applying, you're just going to get the presidential scholarship because you have that 32 ACT and a 4.0. This can feel overwhelming, folks. And the reason it can feel overwhelming is because you're sitting there thinking, wow, he knows all this. How am I supposed to know all this? I don't expect you to know all this. But I do expect you to take the time to make sure that the list you're applying to fits your needs, is suitable for what you not just need, but also want. Because it's so easy to allow the opinions of others to influence the list, or to think, I like that, I'm just going to go with it. A friend's sister went there, so that's what I want to do. So before we dive into the two case studies I want to go over, Anita, over to you.
So for like this rich target likely, because I know at first you could do it like at Naviance, how it like helps you like develop that. But I'll also look at your SAT, and right now most of the schools are like test optional. So do we still have to like do it there, or like how can we tell if it's a rich target or likely without using Naviance? Because I don't think you can take out the the SAT scores or your SAT or PSAT scores like that, because right now most of the majority of the schools are test optional. So
Yep.
like,
So the only schools that aren't test optional are the Florida State schools, the Georgia State schools, University of Tennessee, MIT, and Purdue. Everyone else is test optional. So when you're looking at Naviance, he goes, well, this kid with a 3.8 and with a 1450 got in. Well, what I would do is I would look at Naviance for the past year or two, because you're going to see more in there that don't have test scores. But the general rule of thumb is don't think about the test score when looking. If you have a test score, that can be great. If you don't worry about it. Right now, I want you focusing on the fit piece. Because when you establish that it's a good fit, right? Let's say that you love kind of being able to work with first generation kids and teach them. And you also love a certain you love the theater. Well, being close to a city, that college is going to recognize your ability to go to the theater, and it's going to recognize your ability to help those kids because you're in a place where that's going to be needed. Whereas the kid who loves rock climbing and skiing has no business applying to school in Texas, because they're not going to find any of that within 5 to 8 hours, right? We talk about test scores a lot because the thought is, well, if I don't have a test score, does that hurt me? Or if I have a test score, does that help me? I look at test scores as if I have it and it meets the 50th percentile of that school's expectation, I will submit it. If it does not, I will not submit it. So rather than think about Naviance, focus on the admit rate. And if you are going to look at Naviance, just look at the mere number of students who are accepted or weren't accepted. Don't look at like, what was that student's number? Look more so at last year. University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign took 0 kids from my school. Notre Dame took 0 kids from my school and 8 applied, right? Oh, wow. Michigan State took 30 of the 30. That will be the indicator. Don't focus on the test scores. I think that answers your question, but if it does not, please let me know. Is there an easy way to figure out what GPA and SAT scores are in the right range for a college university? Yeah, I mean, those websites we were talking about before, all kind of outline that. It'll show you what the 50th percentile is. Like Big Future will show you what the averages are. So yes, the websites from the window shopping page will all do that. And Rotem, yes, this will be recorded. I'm also going to send these slides to Kate and to Gail after, so they can share them out, so you can go back through them yourselves. So a lot of today we've been talking about fit and its importance in the process. And I want to go to a case study here, because a lot of the time I hear people talk about how if I want to be a lawyer, I want to go to business school, I want to go to a great grad school. The only way to do that is if I get into that school's undergrad, right? If I'm in UPenn's undergrad, I'm getting into UPenn's grad school for our MBA program. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's just not true. First off, a lot of these grad schools, they want the best of the best from across the country, across the globe. So they actually don't love looking internally. The University of Virginia's law school actually doesn't like pulling from within Virginia's undergrad because A, it looks bad if they do so, and B, it means that they're actually not getting the greatest kids out there. They're just getting the number of kids from within their institution who are strong. So kids from all over the globe get into who go to like schools that you might not be considering right now, go off to great law schools. And right here, and there's a second page, just so you know, right here is a list of all the students from 2021 who ended up at Harvard's law school, where they went to undergrad. And yeah, you'll see Princeton, Pomona, Rice on here, the 3 very high selected schools. But you also have Georgia State. Georgia State's admit rate is 82.4%. They have somebody going to Harvard's law school. You have Boise State on here, 77.5% admit rate. You have the Eastman School of Music. Do you think that student who went to the Eastman School of Music went to the Eastman School of Music with the expectation of becoming a lawyer? Maybe, but maybe not. The whole point of this, I'm going to go to the second page here, just so you can see more of them. The whole point of this is that if Harvard, yes, the Harvard, took students from across 151 different institutions into their law school class of 2021 and similar numbers in 22 and 23, it just goes to show you that it's not about the name of the school you go to that escalates your chances. It's about the opportunities that you take advantage of there. So for the student who decides to go to the University of Tulsa because Tulsa gave them $30,000 a year, and that student's able to go there, get top-notch grades, get internship opportunities, be happy, successful, do well, find the time to study for the LSAT, that kid ends up at a Harvard. Just like the kid who goes to UPenn because they're really strong, but they end up competing against other very strong applicants who fall into the 10th, 15th percentile, 40th percentile. Those kids don't go to Harvard because they didn't have the chops, they didn't get the grades, they didn't have time to study for the LSAT. It's very easy to fall into the mentality that the name of the school matters. It's not about the name, it's about your opportunities that are afforded to you based on the work you've put in and the strength of you within the class. Before I go to the second case study, it looks like there's a couple questions. There's a question about public schools with good art programs. That's pretty specific. I mean, I'm not going to go into that right now. I want to make sure we can talk to the whole crowd. We can cover that later. Somebody asking about how the slides will be distributed. I don't know the answer to that. Kate, I'll let you field that one. But case study number 2. Your child wants to become a doctor. Well, we talked earlier about the importance of not focusing on the major when becoming a doctor, but the 3 things that med schools look at: undergrad GPA in whatever major you choose, your MCAT score, which is the SAT, ACT version for the MCAT. It's 6 sections, like 5.5 or 6 hours. It's long, and internship research opportunities you take on. You'll notice that Harvard is on this list below, as is Williams, as is Yale, very selective institutions. But who here has heard of Austin College or Kalamazoo? And no, Kalamazoo is not that funny thing you blow into to make a weird noise during New Year's Eve. It is the name of a private school in Michigan. But the students who go to Kalamazoo who intend to pursue medical school have an 86% acceptance rate. At Haverford, right outside Philadelphia, 95, same as Harvard's. Occidental, a small, pretty much liberal arts school with mostly political science, history-oriented students in Los Angeles, 90%. What does this tell you? It tells you that the name of the school and the major you pursue has no bearing on med school. It is the opportunities afforded to you. So if you want med school, don't be looking at what majors they have. Look at the pre-med advisory there. What do they do? How do they help you? Do they help you with courses, MCAT studies, so on? UMass Amherst has a phenomenal pre-med track. A lot of students do well there, but they think, UMass Amherst State School, Massachusetts, not for me. That may be true, but stop thinking about the name of the school and focus on what you want down the road. So here are your summer priorities now that we're through the spring. Right now, my students are working through their personal statements and are either finalized with their list and testing or finishing it up right now. They're working through the common application activities because we've done the profile family education. You can do the same. It is entirely up to you if you're willing to manage that time, if you want to put the time in over summer. But by the time you're back in high school for senior year, your common application, profile, family, education, testing, activities, and writing, which is the personal statement, should be done. You should even have started school-specific essays for any early decision school you've decided on. Or if you're applying to a school like UNC, who has an October 15 deadline, which is an earlier one, that should be underway. By the time you get back in high school, you should have a couple supplemental essays done so that through September, October, into November, you can get the rest of it done alongside your schoolwork. Even if you don't have a final college list or you're working on it, that's fine. Your personal statement's going to be needed either way, as is the common application. So don't wait until you have that list. I highly encourage you to get started now. Don't focus on the name. Think about what you need. And if you have questions, ask for help. It's why Kate, Gail, and I exist. You have people at school, you have people outside of school who are happy to help, but we can't if you don't ask questions. So that in mind, feel free to email us, call us, whatever you need. We exist for this purpose. We are happy to help through the process. We at Collegewise pride ourselves in our ability to help on the one-on-one aspect, but given that we have roughly 7 minutes left, I want to focus on answering questions. And if we have time from there, diving into the Supreme Court decision. So yeah, the August 1st is when the school specific side of the Common App opens. But yes, the Common App is open. All my students right now are done with the profile, family, and education tabs. You can fill those sections out now. The only sections you can't start until August 1st are the school specific sections, because between July 28th and August 1st, they shut the Common App down. They replace all the old information with the new questions and they upload it. But by that time, by July 28th, you can have your personal statement done in the application. Someone asked for my contact info. I'll put my email here. Please feel free to email me with whatever questions you have. For international students, I wouldn't say there's that much of a difference. What you need to know is, one, colleges often see international applicants as an opportunity to add diversity to the campus, but they also see them as students who are often willing to pay, especially at the name brand schools. The real big difference is if you're international, as in like you are not a citizen, they may ask for information around visas and whatnot, but from an application standpoint, there isn't much of a difference from what we've discussed today. Somebody asked me about the medical school information. Essentially, med schools don't look at your major. They look at your undergrad GPA, your MCAT score, which is their version of the SAT, ACT, and the internships, research, everything you took advantage of throughout college. So don't think about going to med school as I need to be a biomed engineering major and I need to go to Harvard. Think about where will I be able to, A, get the grades I need to, so that B, I can study for the MCAT with 6 different sections on it while I get internships and research. Oh, and ideally where I'm not paying $50,000 to $75,000 a year, because med school is $400,000. So for my kids looking at law school, med school, business school, take the in-state option if you can. Take the option that says here's a full ride if you can, because med schools and top level grad schools and so on, they don't need to give you money and they see no reason to. So given that we have roughly 5 minutes left and I'm not seeing other questions come in, let's go back to what we were discussing before at the very beginning of the call. For those who weren't joining us, we were talking about the Supreme Court decision around race and its role or lack thereof in the process. I'm hoping that over the next week or so, we learn more about the impact it will have on the Common Application, on your application this cycle, since many of you are rising seniors. While I intend to spend a fair amount of time on this, for those of you who don't know, it's July 12th at 6 p.m. We're doing a speech at Walter Johnson High School. It's for all of Montgomery County, Howard County, whoever wants to come. We're going to fill the room. It's myself, Paul Kanarek, who is the former founder of the Princeton Review and former CEO of Collegewise. We're going to talk about admissions trends, one of them being this topic, but the quick and easy of it is this. You need to understand that your role within this process has not changed. You should not change your list over this decision. All you can do is work with what they change on the Common App and understand they may or may not change the question about race. If anything, to me, it's a reason to focus more on the fit, because if they remove race from this, they will focus heavily, potentially this cycle, on students with very high grades who have done things that you may not have been able to do yet. That's not your fault that you couldn't do that, but it may mean that it becomes even more difficult to get into the highly selective universities that at some point we're looking at different aspects and more holistic view, like ethnicity and background. Now they may be more focused on just achievements. We don't yet know, but the reason I'm bringing it back up is I'm going to share out with Kate and with Gail any information we have so they can share it out further. And on July 12th at 6 p.m. at WJ, if you'd like to attend, please email me or email Gail or email Kate. They have the link to register. We'd love to see you there. But to me, is an interesting change. Not a good one from what I can tell, but it is interesting because it means that the likelihood is the admissions trends that we've seen could go in a different direction. Last but not least, the question about art schools. Without knowing about, again, I don't know what sort of art you are interested in. So whether it's visual or performing, what you need to know is that you will likely need a portfolio. You will likely want to make sure that it is diverse, whether it's music or drawing. And I would focus heavily on institutions like a UMD or UVA, big flagship institutions, or like we talked about before, go to Google, best institutions for visual arts, right? You'll find a plethora of them. Don't just apply to the top 10 because you're looking at the rankings then. Just get a sense of what's available to you and you can narrow it down based on location, selectivity, and so on. But without knowing more about your specific art needs, I wouldn't be able to answer that. I am sorry.
I sent her to her college and career person. I just gave her the information.
Perfect. We have 2 minutes, folks. I said a lot. Questions may be on your minds. If they aren't, please feel free to email me, jordank@collegewise.com, should they come up. Otherwise, happy to go ahead and send you off. In the meantime,